Fantastic start, guys. But let me throw in, Eric, on something you said. I mean, and I've said this to him. I wrote an article once on very little notice, comparing the West to the aging Rolling Stones. You know, Mick and Keith don't much like each other, but they know their solo work's no good, and the only thing they can do is tour together. So if they're going to control their environment, they better get out on tour and get over not liking each other and find the areas they can work together. Well, that sounds rational and very sensible, but it leaves out human agency for making mistakes. You know, you can sell that to anyone, but if publics don't think about that and only elites, and we have this new panoply of things to deal with that Klaus talks about, it doesn't take too many mistakes, and then you're in trouble. But what I want to press you on is the narratives, and I live in Bavaria, of the creditor countries and the debtor countries are both correct, and they're both poisonous. The creditor countries say, look, you enroned your numbers to get in, you lied to get in, you don't collect your taxes, you retire 10 years before we do, and you're not productive. Why should I bail you out and pay for you? The debtor countries say, you knew full well these numbers were garbage, you yourselves in Germany violated the Stability and Growth Pact, and this is really just TARP for your banks. You know, that your banks will fall apart if you don't bail us out. Why should I give up my standard of living to bail out a stupid German and French banker? It seems to me that there's tremendous truth in what everyone's saying, but the politics of this are not being explained to the people in Bavaria and the people in Greece. How do we get beyond this to solve problems? Or Eric, do we just not solve problems? Do we just limp along? Is that what you're suggesting, that we limp along?
Okay, now I don't want to make a normative claim that we should limp along. My goal is not for us to limp along. But is that
where we're going?
But that's exactly where we're going, because nobody wants to make the difficult argument. The difficult argument is also the true argument. Let me put it to you this way. The average age of retirement of a Greek is older than the average age of retirement of a German. By the time that Greek is retired, if you add up the number of hours they work annually, they will have worked 17 more years than the average German, because the average German works under 1,500 hours a year, the average Dutch person works under 1,400 hours a year, and the average Greek person works 2,100 hours a year. Now, there's a good reason why the Greeks have to work so hard, which is that they don't make a whole lot of money, and it's expensive to live in Greece. We can talk about that in a different context. But the fact of the matter is, when we tell the narrative of the undeserving Greeks who have borrowed irresponsibly, we don't often look at the underlying data. By the way, household debt to disposable income in Greece is about half what household debt to disposable income is in Germany, and about 1/3 of what household debt to disposable income is in the Netherlands and in the United Kingdom. So if you want to talk about people borrowing irresponsibly, the Greeks are not going to be the first people I look at.
Mm-hmm. So given this, Klaus, and given that we have these new challenges to confront, and given that Europe doesn't seem to be able to get hold of this, again, Geithner coming over and saying, please, for our re-election, you know, from an American point of view, this is a disaster. If you're the Obama people, you have 17% real unemployment, when you add in the underemployed and the people who've given up looking. And now you have the Europeans one notch away from making that number incredibly more difficult for you, and begging for a solution here. How do we turn the finger pointing that will be inevitable, and then Geithner talking, and then the Austrian finance minister saying, you of all people should not be lecturing us on debt? Well, we're back to the old transatlantic arguments. There's truth in all of that. But the problem is that this doesn't get us anywhere, and the bad feeling to address these things that you're bringing up becomes a problem. How do we get beyond that? Because that's where we are this morning.
Well, first of all, I do not know how we get beyond the economic and financial crisis. It doesn't make sense to play with figures. I think we are in the reality that we see, first of all, a transatlantic divide. The performance of the Treasury Secretary with the Ministers of Finance of the Eurozone did not go down too well. And it presumably was the wrong man to lecture someone on stimulus spending and on deficit spending. Also, we appreciate the experience the Americans have in producing debts, but we do not want to do it I think for a demographic reason. The United States will remain a relatively young nation. Your average age is now 36. It will remain so. Whether the majority of the American people will speak English by the year 2050, that's an open issue, but it doesn't matter. In Europe, it's different. The majority of people will be 50 years old by 2050. And for that reason, we cannot suddenly change the social network, the fabric which keeps our societies together. And for that reason, we cannot risk to produce debts after debts, making sure that the next generation will pay for it. But there is one thing which I think should, again, unite us. We all know that we cannot manage with the situation in the future without working together. There is no solution for the United States without their European allies, and there is no solution for the Europeans without the Americans. So we have to overcome the divide, but we have to do it in a situation where Europe is divided again. We have a north-south divide on financial, economic, social matters. We have a east-west divide on security matters. Most nations in the East, in the old Warsaw Pact, still are afraid of Russia. And after Mr. Putin's inverted commas re-election until 2024, I think these fears will even increase. And they do not want to engage in other things. But we, the Westerners, we firmly know we cannot keep the Americans tied to us if we're not prepared to participate in the solution of American security problems. So we have to be prepared to share the risks and the burdens. But how to get it across to nations who are looking inward because they are confronted with economic, social crisis? If you ask an average German or an average Dutch today, they will not worry about what will happen tomorrow in the field of security, but they may worry about their pensions. And that, I think, is a problem to overcome the different divides. From a European point, I should say, the only way out I could see of this economic, financial, and social crisis we are in is that we take advantage of the crisis, see it as a chance, and agree on what I would call some transfer of national authority to international organizations. That's, in my view, the only way out.